Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Welcome to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage. Today's show is the complete interview with Kenny Passarelli and James William Guercio. Hope you like it. If you do, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Once again, the complete interview with Kenny Passarelli and James William Guercio. Welcome back to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage. I'm really lucky today to have Kenny Passarelli, bass player on way too many hits, and someone that I never really knew who a producer was until I was a huge Blood, Sweat, and Tears Chicago fan, and you did my favorite Blood, Sweat, and Tears album, but James William Guercio. And
I'm a bass player too.
And I know you're a bass player, and actually played bass on some of Chicago stuff as well. But you started in Chicago. You were a session bass player, right? At least that's what.
Yeah, I was.
James.
I actually played guitar in Chicago.
And Kyle told me that you were a really great bass player and was working at
Chess.
Chess, yeah.
I didn't, but I did a couple records there.
Yeah.
I did a few records.
And then,
but this was when I'm 15, 16.
Really? And
I got $10, and they'd bring in a chart. They have an idea. It was Mercury Records mostly, but we used Chess. But I'm going to tell you how excited I was to be in a recording studio. It was $10, and then if I heard it on the radio, I could call and they'd send me another 25.
Well,
that's how I started.
So I did a really long interview with James Pankow.
I saw some of it.
And he was saying that
very talented guy, but I'm interested because he's younger than me.
Well, he was.
We went to DePaul together.
Yeah, that's what he told me. He said he was very complimentary. He said you're a very talented player, and
Jimmy's a very talented guy. I wanted him to write films.
Great writer.
I wanted him to. In terms of horns, he could orchestrate like that.
I thought
the guy's
maybe
great.
The best.
I wanted him to go symphonic.
Plus, great songwriter, not to mention,
absolutely.
But
tremendous writer.
So he was saying that they invited you to come hear them. I think it was Walter was friends with
Walt
you.
and I, Walt.
And so you went to hear him play, and he said they actually dropped the chicken wire in front of the stage that night because they were throwing chicken wings and bottles at them.
Barnaby's,
right?
And he said Barnaby's.
But he said we had to keep playing our original stuff so that you could hear what they.
They didn't want to hear the originals,
right?
And I said I just want to hear the originals.
Yeah. He said, but they made it through the night, and then you said, okay, look,
we're doing it.
We'll go to California, basically.
Yeah.
And so, how did you find the house? How did all that?
He told you all that story.
Yeah.
I had there was 3 bands that came from Chicago, but the primary one was CTA. That's the bus I used to take to school. Mm-hmm. Because they were called the Big Thing.
Right.
I said the Big Thing.
And Buckinghams, right? Was that what they were?
No, I was the Buckinghams happened before that.
But you founded them, or you produced them too,
No,
right?
my cousin, they had a Kind of a Drag was never released. They were on USA Records, and that was my first session. That was the first opportunity I had. They gave me 3 hours. They gave me 7 to 10, and I had 3. We're gonna
increments of 3.
My cousin called me, said there's a band that's been dropped. They kind of had Lottie Miss they kind of had a breakout hit, and so I went and saw them. Okay, so and through I'll never forget this. Because I was so young, I couldn't get in Black Rock. I wear a suit and a tie to get in the door. Mm-hmm. And so the first opportunity was Don't You Care.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Kind of a Drag hadn't been released. They released it after it was announced they were signing with me at Columbia. But Charlie Colello, and Charlie was one of the Four Seasons who I had been on the road with, Charlie Colello,
Mm-hmm.
and his father was a contractor. So I cut the basic track, and I'll never forget Gene Weiss was head of promotion before. He says, okay, we're giving you a chance. You only got you got 2 3-hour sessions, and this is my last thing I'm going to say in this interview. He said, I want you to know what it takes to make a hit. And I'm going like, oh. Yes. He said, when I come in tomorrow morning, it better have, there's only 2 things that make a hit in this business, hummability and tappability. And I'm going, hummability. And I go, would you elaborate on that? What is, and he said, in the first, I better be singing it all the way home on the subway, and in the first 8 bars, I better be tapping my damn foot. So when you hear the Buckinghams, everything was, I started with the drums.
Yeah.
And so that was how my career
I love that.
happened.
We covered Buckinghams.
Buckinghams, nice kids.
It was great music.
But see, in those days, they were very sensitive if you didn't let them play.
Yeah.
See, so I rehearsed them, but I'm playing the guitar and the bass on those records.
And they had a horn section, right? Or did they?
Yeah, well, Charlie Colello.
Yeah.
I put the horns, I wrote all the charts and did it in one night. Came in the next morning, that was it.
Hummability.
Then Kind of a Drag came out. Kind of a Drag came out right after we had signed, so it had already started.
So you always had a
But
love
see,
for the
on
horns.
Mercy Mercy, that's Johnny Guerin. The only records they played on were, they played Hey Baby, they're playing our song,
Mhm.
Susan, rhythm section,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Don't You Care. We had like 4 or 5 hits in a row, yeah.
So, like I said, you always had a love for the horns then. So it was kind of a natural for you to do
Oh yeah.
Chicago. He said, but that I think it was an English duo that came over.
Chad and Jeremy were on a Dick Clark tour,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in the band. But I ended up understanding I could write. I wrote the charts.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people showed up. They had the chord chart, So I got most of the black tours when I started out because I could write the charts, and I wanted to see the world. I don't want to interrupt Kenny. So anyway, Chad and Jeremy were one of the acts. I kind of had it with rock. I had been on a couple tours, worked my way up to the A band, and one of the Zombies was maybe the last tour, one of the last tours. But the road manager, I made $107 a week and paid for the hotel and the food. So I didn't sleep in many hotel rooms.
Mm-hmm.
I would sleep on the bus, or I'd sneak in and take a shower.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we were in between tours. We get to a city for 2 days. You have all the acts. You had to do all the charts, rehearse. It was a big band, But I was going back to college. It was August or September. Would have been 64 or something like that. And I had given him notice. Dick and I were tight. This guy's name was Ed McAdams. He was the road manager, ex-Marine, did not like me. He says, "You will never work in this business again. I'm going to personally, you can't go back to college." And this is fate. This is all fate. And he was so pissed off that he didn't pull the bus off the freeway. He left me at Central and Belmont, tough neighborhood, north side, and he pulled on the shoulder, and I had to walk up. It's 100 degrees. And I had a Showman, the amp, one suitcase, and my guitar, my bass. And I remember I said, I can't leave. This will disappear in 20 seconds. So I made 4 trips up to this phone booth. And the end of the story is real brief. Anyway, I call my mother. I call home. "Oh, you're here. You made it. You're all registered for." There's a guy been calling you. There's a guy calling you all day. And last night he keeps calling. He's got an English accent. I said, Mom, give me the number. And there was no, I remember opening the empty thing with the phone book was gone. And I scratched it. And it was Alan Klein's office. So it was Alan Klein.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm just telling you my life, and then we'll go on. And so I scratched the number, I call it, and it was Chad Stewart. It was Alan Klein's office. And then Chad got on the phone. Where are you? And I said, well, I ain't gonna be, I just got fired. I just got kicked off the bus. He said, there's a ticket at O'Hare Field at 6 or 7 o'clock. You're at the Warwick Hotel. We got to do the Tonight Show, Joey Bishop, Mike Douglas, I think, was in Philadelphia, and we got to do these shows. They had visa problems. Yeah. And he said, and we got to do it. We're booked. We're doing these TV shows. We need you. And so I go home, and my mother picked me up, and I said, Mom, I got to go to New York. She started crying. I said, no, I'm going to college. I'm gonna go, but I need $200. I can't go to New York. I mean, so I got $200 out of the college fund, and I never went home. I mean, it was just fate. So when you talk about Chad and Jeremy, I don't know if Jimmy doesn't know, but they knew Chad and Jeremy because I wrote a hit called Distant Shores. And they got their visas taken care of, and they came back, and I got word, because the hotel, I only had 4 days. It was only 3 or 4 days paid for, and they paid me like $300. It was a lot of money. Anyway, Kenny, Denver.
No, that's a great story, man.
So, you were original member of
Barnstorm. Yeah, with Joe.
Yeah. And how did that happen?
You know, it was a telephone call from Tommy Bolin. I was, because I could read music and I could triple. I was a classical trumpet player as a child, and I was playing bass and singing, and I was doing session work in Vancouver. And I got a call from Tommy. He says, listen, this guy, Joe Walsh, quit the James Gang, and he's moved to Nederland, Colorado with his wife and child, and he's looking for a bass player, and I recommended you. And at this point, I remember I was listening to Surf's Up, and Tommy and I had already gone to New York, and I was thinking, Funk 49, that's, I don't know about that. And he says, no, you got to take the call. And that's how it started. Joe called me. I flew down to Denver, drove my dad's car, because I'm from Denver, Colorado originally. I drove up to Nederland and met Joe, and that was the beginning of it. And then our first song, I was
building the studio.
He was building the studio.
Finished.
Right. I mean, that's the connection
here.
The
hayloft was finished, but I was waiting for a board. We never got the board.
But didn't y'all have trouble with the studio you were at? And
well, what it was is it was Joe had. He's up in Nederland, Colorado. About 10, 15 miles away from Jim's house and studio, and he had a 24 track in his basement, and it blew. Something blew. Bill Simzik said, who was Joe's producer and our producer at that time. He called Jim. He says, you know what? I think Jim Guercio's building a studio up here, and that's how we ended up there.
The first record out of
the first one was Rocky Mountain Way.
The first hit, but
we brought in a little TIAC. I said, Bill, I don't have any equipment. We got a great room. It's all wired mics. We're waiting for the board. He says, I'll get one.
Yeah, it's true. It was.
So Rocky Mountain Way was on a.
A little, Bill will tell you. Wasn't it a TIAC?
It was a TIAC, I think.
A real funky
I
little
can't
board.
remember.
Wow.
But
Bill's a great engineer, man. There was no bathrooms.
Where we started. Yeah, there was no.
There was horse stalls.
Yeah, there were horse stalls.
I heard there was still.
Horse stalls.
Fresh horse manure on the.
No, we were peeing in the
downstairs.
stalls.
I just had enough money to do the hayloft.
Yeah.
No, but you got up to that second floor, and it was like, whoa, it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was the second floor. We put a lot in.
So did you buy the property first, or did you, or how?
Yeah.
So
it took a long time. Transamerica was going to develop it, 3,000 homes, golf courses. But half of it was owned by an oil company, and I had a friend, and it took about 3 years. 71 is when I closed the deal, October, started the studio. So when did you record, 72?
72.
72 wasn't
yeah,
finished.
we were there. That was the Barnstorm record, and
Yeah.
then Rocky Mountain Way was a little after.
So how did you end up playing with Elton John?
Well, again, it was here's a bizarre story. Barnstorm broke up in '74. I had been offered a gig with Stephen Stills. Matter of fact, I did a tour with Manassas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they recorded Manassas.
Yeah, Manassas was
Ranch.
up at the ranch. So, and I met Stephen when I was 19. I heard the acetate of the CSN record in Gold Hill, Colorado. There was a guy, Happy Logan, in Denver said, Stephen Stills, do you know Steve Stills? And I said, sure, are you kidding? Buffalo, Springfield, I heard him. They came through Denver and Super Session. And he says, well, he's looking for a bass player, and I recommended you. So I drove up to Gold Hill, and I'll never forget when the door opened in this little Victorian house. It was cold as hell. It was like February of 1969. And there's Stephen, looking exactly like he looks on the CSN record. He's got his hiking boots and his little button-down shirt and V-neck. And he says, come in. And he says, you've been recommended. And tiny little stereo, almost like the JFK one you have here.
Yeah.
And he puts on an acetate of the CSN record. And I'll never forget. Do-do-do-do-do.
Oh.
Changed my life.
Yeah.
So I met Stephen then. He says, listen, you know, we hung out and played. And he says, you know, here's my manager. His name's David Geffen. We're going to do something called Woodstock or something. I don't know anything about it, but it's going to be our first gig. It didn't work out. Neil Young had a guy named Greg Reeves that he met at the Motown. So I didn't get that gig. So fast forward to '71, Manassas moves to Boulder, Colorado. I'm playing with Joe, but I idolize Stephen. And
Well, he's a great guitar player.
he's a great bass player, too. You know, he's a great,
Stephen's
love the one you're
Stephen's
with.
good.
That's
all
CSN
Steve.
record.
He's
CSN
underrated
record.
as a musician.
Yeah.
Tremendous player.
Engineer, he could do it all. I mean,
Yeah.
that CSN record, that's all Stephen.
Well, one of my all-time favorite records, I probably wore it out every way you could make from cassette to 8-track to vinyl, whatever, was Deja Vu.
Oh, Deja Vu,
Deja
killer,
Vu,
man.
yeah.
That was, yeah, well, that was, later on, Stephen says, in '74, let me go back to Joe Walsh.
Manassas.
Joe Walsh decides we finish the Dan Fogelberg record. Okay, Joe has decided.
Joe produced it.
Joe produced
at
the
ranch.
Souvenirs
Wow.
record.
At the ranch.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so Joe says, listen, he was making a life choice change in his life, and he met another gal, and he says, I'm going to break up Barnstorm. I want you to come with me to L.A. And I said, sure, Joe. And I go home to my parents' house in Denver, and I call up Stephen. I said, man, do I still have that gig offer? Because he'd offered me the gig before, and I said, I can't leave Joe. You know, we've been doing this for 2 years. So he hired Barnstorm, open for Manassas. We did a whole summer tour. And I said, is the gig still on? I said, I don't want to, the band's breaking up. And he says, you got it. So I called Irving Azoff.
Yeah.
And I said, Irving, I'm not coming to L.A. And he says, well, I said, can you tell Joe? And he says, no, you have to call him. So I called. He was in Big Sur with his new girlfriend. And I called him and I said, Joe, you know what? I love Colorado. I'm here at Caribou. I want to stay in Colorado. And he was cool. He says, okay, do what you got to do. But I thought, well, I burned that bridge. So a couple years later, I played with Stephen. I was offered the tour to do the '74 tour with CSNY, but I went to rehearse with them at Neil's. But Neil had Tim Drummer.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
and plus Neil and Stephen, it was always a competition.
Buttrey was there then, weren't he?
Yeah. Right. So in Russ Kunkel, you know, there's all these people. So it didn't work out, and I went off to do something else, and I get this call. It's Joe Walsh. He says, hey, listen, I'm with Elton John and David Foster, and Elton's firing his band. He's firing Dee and Nigel, and he wants to hire you. He's heard, because I was playing fretless bass.
Right.
He says he likes your sound, and he loves what you did on the Rick Derringer record that was done at Caribou.
Simsic?
Simzik produced that, and I said, "Are you kidding me?" And I said, "Really?" And he says, "Yeah." So it was through Joe Walsh, and that was the beginning of my work with Elton. And I get a call from first management calls me, Connie Pappas, and she says, "Well," I said, "Is this for real?" And I said, "Could you get Elton on the phone for me to make sure this isn't some kind of like BS?" And Elton says, "Here's the deal. We're going to rehearse a month in Amsterdam, and then we're doing our first gig at Wembley Stadium," which he played with the Beach Boys.
Wow.
He played bass. It was Rufus, Joe Walsh before he joined,
Eagles.
the Eagles, Beach Boys, and Elton John, and we did Captain Fantastic. But because of his insistence, the Beach Boys did 5 encores before we got on there, and people were looking at their watches and yawning by the time we got on there. He blew us off the stage.
It was just, it was 100,000 people.
Yeah, well, sure. Right.
And the Beach Boys are competitive.
Oh, the
We had
Beach
no
Boys!
record
The
deal.
Beach Boys were the Beatles in,
Right.
in,
We had a
in
hell of a
London.
show.
Yeah,
Hey,
it's a great show.
We're gonna take a break, and we're gonna
Okay.
go right back.
Hey, Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum Backstage fans, check out our new Backstage gear. From t-shirts to coffee mugs, we've got you covered. Not yet a fan? Check out our YouTube channel and enjoy some intimate conversations with the world's best musicians.
Welcome back to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage with our guest today, Kenny Passarelli and James William Guercio. Jim now.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's right. So, getting back to Stephen Stills and Manassas and all that, what a great period of music.
You know what? Working with Steven up at Caribou Ranch, because when I got the gig to work with him, I stayed in he lived in Rawlinsville, which is outside of, not too far from where Caribou was. And so it was like a dream come true to live in his guest house and be really part of the creative process, you know, writing, being in the studio with him, watching the whole process with Steven. Steven's an amazing, brilliant guy. So,
You can play anything.
yeah, he can play anything.
Steve is
Yeah.
a producer. He's really good.
Yeah,
Tremendous
I've
talent.
never heard anything of his that I didn't like. Never.
Yeah, and you talk to Neil and Graham and David, they'd all say that when it came time to do whatever needed to be done, Steven could do it, whether it's playing a timbale part or being able to just say, "Hey, Kenny," and grab the bass and say, like this. He and Hendrix played together. He and Jimi were very good friends, and they'd trade off. I didn't witness it, but he told me that he'd play bass and Jimi'd play guitar, and then Jimi played bass and he played guitar. So he's one of those special artists.
Was a good bass player.
Absolutely.
I was thinking, of course, Noel was originally
He was a guitar player, right?
And I said, but I was listening to Watchtower, and the runs on the end of Watchtower, I'm like, oh my God, he was really great. Then I find out he hated the song and left, and it was Hendrix playing bass on All on the Watchtower.
That's what I heard. And Mike Finnegan told me that Mike Finnegan played on Rainy Day.
Yeah.
He was in I forget what band he was in, and Jimi heard him play and said, "Come on in."
Yeah.
And he's the one that told me that he and Mitchell, like Jimi would lay down bass with Mitch and build the tracks from that.
And Mitch, oh my God.
Yeah, what a
Mitch
monster.
lived here.
Really?
Yeah, and they were little. I mean, I got
Little
a picture
tiny
of
guys,
him. It's like I
yeah.
got a fifth grader.
Yeah.
And
What a monster player, huh?
He was, he was a jazz.
He's a jazz player.
What's the clip you have with Jimi doing steps? That's the kind of
Oh,
man
that
I
was,
That
that
was
was
King
actually
Curtis,
filmed, I
right?
think, across the street.
I know, but because we all heard a buzz about this kid from Seattle,
Yeah.
and I met Jimi right there.
He lived on Jefferson Street,
Yeah.
right over here. He lived above Joyce's House of Glamour. It was a black beauty salon. He was,
Yeah.
of course, dating Joyce.
Yeah.
And Billy Cox and he were at Fort Campbell, about 70 miles down the road. And when they got out, they came back here. And they played all around here in Murfreesboro, Tullahoma, Printer's Alley.
that blues
and
club,
that if you went in the Hendrix exhibit, if you saw that stage, we actually took, that is the actual stage. It's not a reproduction.
Oh, that's it.
That's it. I went in and took it out before they turned it into a condo. And because I wanted kids to see that he didn't start at Woodstock, although
No, he had pomade. He had a suit. He had a tie. But he
Yeah.
had chops.
yeah, and he
And he was a lefty, you know.
but he was still doing those.
Oh yeah,
you
all
know,
the stuff.
all
You
that
see
stuff,
it on
yeah,
the.
right.
I saw it with his left hand
Yeah.
going over there.
But that was a show here in Nashville that used to come on the weekends. Night Train, I think was the name of it, and it was local talent. And yeah, Billy Cox told me he would leave town all the time, you know, go out with the Isley Brothers or somebody, and then he'd get stranded, and Billy'd send him a bus ticket, and he'd come back and stuff. But when he left, when Chaz Chandler got him, he called Billy to meet him in New York. He says, Jimmy, I don't have I got one bass string tied in a square knot, and I don't have even bus money to get to New York. And Jimmy said, well, I'll get you in the band once I make it. I'm going to England. This guy's going to make me a star. And so Billy actually did go from basically playing on that stage here in the museum to Woodstock.
See, I played with Chaz because Chaz was in the Animals.
Yeah,
he was a business kind of guy.
Yeah.
He was a bass player.
Yeah,
Chandler was a bass player.
loved Chaz Chandler, and
Yeah.
I love the Animals. That was a great group.
Yeah.
So I'm on the internet, you know, just kind of looking around for, hopefully find something, you know, for the museum, and I see rock memorabilia going up for sale in Colorado, and immediately I'm like, it's got to be Caribou, you know. So, and this is like 2 days before the auction, and so I got on and I saw the film of you in Ouray cabin, right?
Right.
I sat with Elton John just like this, and he had Bernie's lyrics right here, and this is where Island Girl and The Rock of the Westies, Always Done.
And you were talking about the piano that I bought was the one, and I wanted it because I love the process of composition and everything. And you said that. Could you tell a story about how Elton had to take the lyrics?
This is great. We connected. You know, Elton didn't really talk too much. You know, he was all about business and taking care of it and writing, and so everybody else had their girlfriends and stuff, and Elton said, "Listen, would you come over and help me out here? Just turn the pages." So the piano you have there, that was in Ouray, I sat and turned the lyrics that Bernie had sent him. Bernie wasn't there. They had a relationship at this point where Bernie would send lyrics, Elton would look at it, maybe he'd check off something, or, you know, again, we're always looking as a writer, you know this, what's written is not necessarily easy to sing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So he would here and there, but really no massive changes. And I saw him on that piano go from page to page for Rock of the Westies. I saw him write. He had some ideas, but it really was like over and over and over until he pieced it together where he could sing it.
I'm always amazed at how you can take lyrics and to me it's easier to put lyrics to
put music. Yeah.
Elton would come to the ranch without anybody.
Yeah.
With these lyrics, and then he'd bring these. I'm telling you, he wrote those albums in like a week.
Yeah.
He might have had them cooking, but on that piano.
He had a couple. He'd have some ideas.
One take.
Yeah. No,
Really?
we did Rock of the Westies. We did it as 5-piece. You know, 5-6-piece actually. We had two. It was Davy Johnson, Caleb Quay, Roger Pope, great drummer, Ray Cooper, and James Newton Howard. First he'd write, and I was, again, because I lived, that was part of it, is I lived there, so, and I was always at the ranch, and so that was what it was. I saw him actually piece together. He had some ideas, but it was just repetition over and over. How are you going to fit this in? How is he going to sing it? And he did it on that piano.
Anything to been a fly on the wall like that.
Man, I got to tell you, it was an experience.
I
couldn't believe it.
The Beatles, the new documentary that they put out on Disney. It was so cool to see
the process, right?
Actually, McCartney actually write and get back, you know, or
yeah, it's pretty neat, isn't it?
Yeah, I was wondering how did you know, you just see it, you know, it's kind of like, well, they're not gods.
Elton had it in his head too. With us as players, he knew it wasn't. He never said play it like this. It was when I worked with him, I'd stand over to the left side of the piano, and I'd just watch his left hand, memorize what he was doing there, and then I'd do whatever I wanted. And it was never don't do that. He just let everybody do what
Well, that's
need
the sign
be.
of a good
Oh man,
boss is let people.
get the best out of people by
Right.
letting them be who they are.
Yeah. My mentor Billy Sherrill said, if I have to go in and play everything, why hire them? He said if you leave the players alone, the ones that of that caliber that are here, they'll give you a record. If the song's good, it boils down to the song, because they could play the phone book and make it sound great.
It comes down to the song every time. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah. So I was walking James Pankow through, and we get to those pianos, and he goes, "Oh God!" He goes, Elton loved our horn section, and he said he asked me to write the horns to this song, and I did, and I turned it in gave it to him, and the producer said, "I don't really know if I want Chicago's horn section. I want more of a Tower Power type, more brass. It's not sax." And he said, "Okay, whatever, And so I think they may have added another lower, another brass instrument to it, like a tuba or something. I don't know." And he said, so the song comes out and it's "Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me." So James wrote
a whole arrangement.
And he said they left me off the record. And he said,
That's a great story. I had no idea.
if you listen to the horn, so it
You
sounds,
kind of do,
it
right?
sounds
Because
like
they cut it.
Chicago.
They cut it at Caribou.
Yeah.
Don't Let the Sun.
And that's what he said. He said,
Yeah.
So that's how that happened.
That's
He said,
really
I didn't
cool.
want to get paid, but I did kind of,
You wanted the credit.
at least get, a bump,
You deserve the credit.
Sure. But it does sound like Chicago horns, he's just got such a style.
But I don't think did he like that song?
Who? No, the song he didn't like is "Don't Go Breaking My Heart." He and Bernie, we cut that. We couldn't come back to Caribou because of tax reasons for
did that
Elton.
in Canada.
We did it at Gordon Lightfoot's studio in Toronto. We did the Blue Moves record, which I'm really happy
Well,
to
wasn't
be on.
Kiki was at the ranch with David?
Kiki was dating Davey at the
Yeah.
time. She was at
I
the
love
ranch.
Kiki.
Elton and Bernie it didn't go on the Blue Moves record because the Blue Moves record was Elton and his manager John were breaking up. Bernie and his wife. It was one of those, a lot of sad lyrics. But we cut "Don't Go Breaking My Heart" at the same time. Elton had this idea. Bernie was in Barbados. I'll never forget. He faxed him lyrics, and we did that in Toronto. But they didn't like the song, even though it was the biggest hit. As far as airplay goes, bigger than any other thing. Massive hit.
So another one of my all-time favorite, and again, just everything, talent, musicianship, vocals, but songwriting. Hall & Oates, man, God knows. just...
Oh, Daryl, to me, one of the best white soul singers I've ever worked with. John's expertise was putting together background vocals. He was a lot of people don't know that. They think, well, who's the little guy with the mustache? What's his? Well, he's a guitar player and he's really a picker. He was kind of a traditional like acoustic. When they started out, Daryl played mandolin and John played fingerpicking style at Temple University. That's where they started. And then later they went into this Philly sound. But Daryl, monster singer. And I brought the Elton John band to work with after Elton broke the band up in '76. I got a call from Tommy Mottola. The bass player had quit Hall & Oates, and they had a #1 single called "Rich Girl." He says, "Could you come out and help us out?" And so I said, "Okay." And then I realized that the band that he used on the road was just these kids that they were paying nothing to. And I said, "Well, you need a band that can record other than tour." So I got Caleb and Roger to play, and that's when I really figured out what a great artist, both of them.
Yeah.
But Daryl, what a singer.
Yeah,
And I
writer,
did a solo record with him with Robert Fripp produced.
Well, I mean, he got it honestly because he grew up listening to Motown, and
Oh,
of course
yeah.
he was a huge Gamble Huff.
Gamble
fan.
Huff and the whole Temptations.
Yeah.
They were all. He was.
And he ended up working with. Didn't he work with the Tempt or
The Temps did a did a record with Hall & Oates at the Apollo.
But he went out. He got to hang out with, as a young kid, with one of the ones that was there at Sigma. I can't remember what group it was, but he said, I got to live my fantasy because I got to actually hang out
Yeah,
with
he was
these guys.
those guys. He really learned a lot from
Yeah.
that whole experience
No,
in
he's
Philly
for
because they were
real.
going to school in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
They were at Temple.
Yeah,
He's on a solo tour right now.
We
Yeah.
were gonna see John.
Yeah, John.
Just texted
John
us
lives
before.
here,
Right.
and I got a hold of him, and he says, "Man, I'm sorry, I'm doing a session in Jamaica right now." So anyway, he says, "Big hole. You got to get John down here."
I'd love to. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd love to get Daryl too. I mean, I'd love to get both of them there. So let me jump back to Chicago because that was my probably all-time favorite band. That was who I wanted to be like. And like I said, never had a chance of being close to Terry Kath, but man, what a great guitar player and singer and writer and everything too. But I'm just intrigued by that whole story. So, in order to get a double album, CST, because the songs they weren't writing 33-minute hits. They were writing these huge.
You mean how'd that happen?
Well, yeah, I mean, because from what I understand, you had to do it. You had to do. Clive said, "I'll give you a double album if."
The first album, I just forced it through. 598 double records.
The CTI. So, but you
It
had to
was-
produce one album for Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Yes.
In
It was
order-
a real, well, the reason for that was called the Buckinghams. Al and I were friends. They had the Blues Project. I fly to New York to meet, he says, and as Steve Katz will tell you, because Steve was a guitar player.
Mhm.
They had no singer. And Al said, "Did you write all those charts on the Bible? What did you?" I said, "Well, I was interested in bringing Stravinsky to the radio." Okay, so he heard it's called Time and Charges, and Sid Bernstein comes over because he's the manager of and he says, "Well, you can't do this." I'm in Al's little apartment in the Village, and Bernstein said, "You can't take this to Columbia." I said, "I just signed a contract. I got to go take it to." He says, "No, Blood, Sweat, and Tears is going on Atlantic," and that was the end of them. I said, "Al, no problem. I'll help you any way you want." And so the first, and then for whatever reason, John Simon, who was a really nice guy, staff producer at Columbia, did Child's as the father of the man.
Yeah.
Right. The first BS.
So then the group breaks up. And Al and I were friends, so Al wanted me to do the first album. It didn't work out then anyway. And I was I started a management company. We had the Buckinghams. And I had a group called the Firesign Theater. These four
comedy
guys
group.
with Howard Hessman. This is you want to know where Blood, Sweat, and Tears came from? From Bennett Glotzer following me around that party, and Janice was there, and Jim Morrison was there, Howard Hessman, the Firesign Theater, and a folk singer named Mark Spolstra. And that's how Blood, Sweat, and Tears happened. I said, I've got a horn band. I'm doing this group.
To
I'm
Chicago.
not, but Al, you were going to do it for Al, and I said, yeah, but Bernstein didn't want me to Columbia, Anyway, that's where Blood, Sweat, and Tears came from.
And they didn't
And
have
I-
a singer, right?
No,
Because
I
Al
had-
Cooper
I
was
kept-
gone.
and he says it's unlimited, and that's when I met Lucy. She's a model in New York, and I said, wait a minute, how many tickets do I get to go to New York? And I was really tough on those guys, but he said it's unlimited. I'll pay you. You got to please. Bennett Glotzer ended up managing him, and Steve Katz's brother was his partner.
How did you find David Clayton
Bobby
Thomas?
found him. We went down to the bottom, and we went down to the Village to a club, and he was a three-piece Canadian group. He had a three-piece group, and that's how we got David. I went into that conference room and I had a big fight with all the suits. Clive was not running, Clive was in business affairs, and that might have been where we bonded, because I walked in the room and I'll never forget Eddie Matthews said, "You've destroyed our group. We don't know what this is. You've destroyed one of the biggest groups we could have had called, it's not rock, it's not jazz, it's not, and that's when I stood up in the damn conference room and I said, there's 3 number 1s on here. And then they canceled believe me, Bobby worked those halls and we started with 5,000, that's all they printed. These guys dressed me down and I stood up and said, there's at least 3 number 1s on this son of a, oh, I know what I did. I said, how many in this room have played in a band? This is all suits.
Right.
Okay. How many have ever written a song?
Right.
No hands. How many have been in a studio and recorded a song? I said, then shut the this is,
I'm going to tell you what.
And that was it for me, and that was it for me. And Clive respected me, and then it became a huge hit. But anyway, when Blood, Sweat, and Tears came out, Bobby was there every day. That thing didn't happen. That thing built. And it was building, and I'm right there trying to do, it hadn't really hit yet. It hadn't really happened yet, and they canceled all my, so I had to jam it through. And then, let me tell you, Chicago, it didn't happen for years. We went to England and we had I'm a Man was a hit off that album. We had no hits till I started chopping everything up 2 years later.
Right, and and that's so good. James tell me about he.
Jim, they were upset.
Yeah,
the band never forgave me.
Yeah.
But Clive called me and he said, if you don't cut these things to under 3 minutes, we've got an underground. So we defied nature. I'm telling you, they didn't press records.
But the editing that you did on it was unbelievable.
Oh, it drove it. The band never forgave me.
Well, I think
Terry Terry would go, hey, pretty good job.
Well,
Terry and I were talking. He'd go, Girk, how'd you do that? I said, we got to be on the radio, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, they were pissed. They were pissed.
Panko, he was not pissed a year or two ago.
No, but at the time.
At the time, I knew that they were pissed and they said so. But man, the
beginnings,
the editing that you did to be able to make me smile out and then bring it back, the tail end of it.
It created it, yeah. Well, I love Jimmy's work. I was very respectful of what he had done, and I tried to keep the thematic. So I tried to pull the hooks out.
Yeah, and pulling out "Color My World," that was.
Yeah.
I know Brainer, wasn't it? That was
I got to tell you, well, it should have been long. It was a real short movement.
Yeah.
And I extended it a little. "The Color My World" was a very short piece of music. It became the prom dance.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, you want to know who? They're all talented.
That was the first. I told James. I said, I was playing at Opryland Hotel. We're going to take a break in a second. I was playing at Opryland Hotel in my band. We had the house gig there. And I look out in the audience at a booth like this, and my wife was sitting there with her. She was managing a doctor's office, and I didn't play on "Color My World," so I got up, went down, and that was the song I asked my wife to dance to the first time I met her. Was that? Hey, we're gonna take a break. We'll be right back.
The Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum has been celebrating the men and women who make the music of our lives since 2006. The Musicians Hall of Fame is the one and only museum in the world that honors the musicians that played on the greatest recordings of all time.
It's a music city, huh? It's, where else are you going to get the cats, all the cats that are in this room?
From Hank to Hendrix, from LA to Nashville, the Musicians Hall of Fame will take you on a musical journey highlighting the talented musicians that created the soundtrack of our lives. Come see what you've heard, and while visiting, check out the interactive Grammy Museum Gallery at the Musicians Hall of Fame. Located in the heart of downtown Nashville in the first floor of the historic Nashville Municipal Auditorium. See you soon at the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum.
Welcome back to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage with Kenny Passarelli and James William Guercio. And now that we're friends again, Jim.
Yeah, we're friends.
So,
you have the best museum in the country.
That's right, man.
We're
big fans.
I can talk about that.
I can
this
roll with that.
No, really, you've done an unbelievable job. This is the first time I've been here, and I walked through it yesterday and today. It's unbelievable. I don't know how you got all the stuff you got, but on the Caribou stuff, great. But you've got the Roy Orbison. By the way, my first tour was with Bobby Goldsboro,
Yeah.
who was a guitar player for Roy.
Right.
And
Candyman.
Yeah, and Bobby would I'd go, what's the big deal about it? And he'd go, he can sing, he can sing.
Yeah.
That was pretty,
Yeah.
I said, okay. And then I backed him up, and I mean, this guy had chops.
He's
He
just a
wouldn't,
nice
he wouldn't
man.
move. He wouldn't move.
Yeah. He didn't
He
have
was very
to.
polite.
He didn't have
He'd just stand like, he says, Jimmy, you watch him sing, watch him. And he just sang there, come on. Anyway, you've got all the stuff.
Yeah, man.
Well,
If anybody wants to see these people and what this is a great place.
I'm really lucky that the families are friends, and so and they live here, and so they put a lot of that stuff in here. But because of Billy letting me hang out when I first got here,
Got to meet all these
I got to meet all the session musicians, and but I was privy to be able to see who the great session musicians were. Like we were just talking about Pete Drake and people like that, and so when I got ready to retire, the second thing I did after songwriting was I had guitar shops, and so 6 degrees of separation pretty much is how we got most everything, and occasionally we would buy stuff like from auction, like with your stuff.
How'd you get Hendrix stuff?
That one?
Because the guy in Seattle has been overpaying for everything.
Oh, that was from Experience Music, yes. And I thought for sure he was going to get Mitch's drum set we got too.
You got Mitch's drum set.
Yeah, from the Watchtower and all on Crosstown Traffic and stuff like that.
Is Mitch still with us?
No, he passed away a few years ago.
And the two guys that blew me away were Bonham and him.
Yeah.
But actually, Keith Moon was the most fun of them. I mean, that's a guy I had a relationship with.
Right.
Keith
They're all
Moon.
great.
They're all gone. Yeah.
And they worked for that music like nobody else could.
Yeah.
Like nobody else could play
I
drums.
told
with
Mitch,
them.
I said, I was so happy that we kind of became friends, and I told him.
So he lived here before he passed
in the
away.
90s, yeah. And he come to my guitar shop, I gave him a sparkle red snare drum. He brought me in some stuff, way before I even thought about doing the museum. But I was able to tell him, I said, nobody could have done Manic Depression the way that you did it. I mean, it was...
These guys were stylistic.
Yeah.
I mean, Keith Moon was really an interesting guy.
Yeah.
Too much alcohol.
Yeah.
He was a lot of fun. I liked him.
But anyway, I knew
That's how you
a
got
bunch of
this
people,
stuff,
and so that was how we were able to do it. And it's still a work in progress. I'm a huge Tom Petty fan, and I just bought Stan Lynch's studio kit from '79 through when he left in '94. But I appreciate that a lot. It really means a lot coming from you guys.
Oh man, absolutely. I've seen it.
Well, see,
I've been to the experience. I've been to Cleveland. I've seen it. And
I haven't been to Cleveland.
I've never seen anything like this.
So the Caribou Kids that we trained, our engineers, and John Carcella was the manager of the studio.
Right.
Johnny C. He got out of the Army. I made him a Roy. He was just a nice Italian kid from Chicago. Daryl Dragon played with the Beach Boys, and Captain and Tennille, Daryl hired John to build Caribou, and he called it Rumble, and that's where George, Petty, and Roy did that record. So I felt really close. He'd call me and he said, "They just keep asking about Caribou. What about that?" And I'd give him, and so I felt part of that record, and I love that record. Jeff Lynne, didn't Jeff produce that?
Yeah.
Jeff.
Yeah.
He's a good guy.
Yeah. What did you think of Terry? I mean, what?
Terry was the closest to me. See, Terry, Taft High School. Terry went to Taft. I had to go all the way to St. George because we didn't have, I got a kind of a scholarship at high school. And Terry was younger than me. When I moved up with Dick Clark Terry was from my neighborhood. The other guys are all from different parts of the only guy from the north side, well, Jimi was from Notre Dame, but that was kind of Park Ridge, you know what I mean, Notre Dame High School. I'm St. George, old time Christian brother, beat the shit out of you. And then Terry was from Taft. The connection was 2 years before our class, Terry was a year younger than me, was Grease. The guy that wrote Grease, Richie.
Yeah.
All these Italians I grew up with. They're all Sicilian, I'm half Sicilian. But they're the actual, it was an actual, based on real people,
right.
The Grease guys. So I met Terry, and he said, I can't play bass. I said, bullshit. I had a Dan Electro, I wonder whatever happened, and it had been in a fire, so it would get my dirty, and I had it all taped up with gaffers. It had been in a fire, and I paid $7 for it, and I gave it to Terry. Terry never forgot. I said, Terry, you're replacing me. I got a chance to go to the B tour, and that's when Walt came in, and they became one of the Clark bands for a tour, but Terry became the bass. I gave him my Dan Electro, $7 bass. Terry is a great. Terry was, there was a lot of issues about wanting to do, you know, it was really hard for me to tell Hendrix. I said, Jim, you got to let me do this thing. You guys can go do a record, you know. Because, see, Jim wanted to produce the band.
Jim.
Hendrix.
Jimi Hendrix wanted to produce.
Oh no, Jimmy, yeah, Jimmy and I
Jimmy,
knew each other.
Jimmy was
I'm
a
at
big
the
fan
whiskey.
of
I
Terry.
come back from doing BS&T. Hendrix is right there. You got to let me do. I said, you and Terry will be incredible. You can do it. Just like they're kicking the shit out of me. BS&T is happening, but Chicago. I mean, I mean, this is before I did CTA. Okay. No, Jimmy was into whiskey all the time. They were the house band.
Yeah.
No, Jimmy and I I liked him a lot.
Well,
I wasn't in Monterey, I wasn't in Woodstock, but he was in front of, he told me, he said, this cat is much better than me. See, I had met him on the Clark tour, way back. We're wearing suits and doing steps, you know.
yeah.
Oh, you didn't know, Jimmy didn't, Pankow might have told you that.
Well, he told me that he was backstage and
All the time.
Hendrix walked up to him and they were like, whoa.
All the time.
You know.
And that's when I had to tell him, I said, Jim, you got to let me do the first album. You and Terry could be unbelievable.
Well, he said that Hendrix said that he wanted to cut some,
Yeah.
record with him, you know.
And Terry would have done it, but we were barely, you know, we were the house band, and I had just gotten my teeth kicked out. BS&T hadn't broken yet, and this is, I think it's before we went back and recorded. Yeah.
Well, that's good to know.
No, Hendrix told me that guy's got more chops than I do.
And he said
about Terry.
Yeah, he said that Pankow said that in your horn section plays like one set of lungs or something like that.
One set of lungs, yeah. No.
And Terry's voice, though.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah.
He was the White Ray Charles.
Yeah, yeah.
I got to tell you what happened one night. I couldn't believe it. Johnny C. was there. He told me. They had the trucks and the bus. And this is after we had happened. And we had these hard shell guitar cases, you know. And they're walking up like here, up an alley to get to the bus. Some kid jumps down, grabs one of Terry's guitars, and gets away. Johnny tells me, he said, Terry had a guitar stolen tonight. I don't know which one it was, but that's not what. I said, wait a minute, John, what, aren't you doing your job? What, you know, I'm telling you, the kid jumped down, grabbed a guitar, and I said, well, what did Terry say? And this is Terry. He goes, what the he says, don't worry about it. Come on, let's go. Terry was the most down-to-earth talent, unbelievable talent. When you said you enjoyed him vocally, he didn't want to sing.
Neither did Hendrix, right?
No, he didn't. Terry, the most incredible performance was "Tell Me" from Electra Glide. If you listen to that song,
Man.
that was his. But he he worked on that. He says, you got to let me sing it. You got to let me sing it. And I believed in him. But Little One, you should listen to that sometime. Danny wrote it. Danny Seraphine wrote a song called Little One. And no, Terry was, It Better End Soon.
Yes. Yeah.
It Better End Soon.
I love that record. We used to play that too.
Yeah. Anyway.
So,
Those guys were all good guys. Peter, great singer. You know, Bobby Lamb, great singer.
I thought they were all great musicians too. I mean,
Oh yeah, good players.
Yeah.
Great players.
I loved the way that Peter Cetera played bass. You know.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
he's
got
a
him
monster.
He got him
We had
to
a big
play-
fight on the first album.
He got him to play with a pick,
Peter wouldn't play at the pick.
Yeah.
but it had to be that way from the
Oh,
sonic.
I
point
only
of
had
view.
8 tracks.
Yeah.
I only had 8
Bass
tracks. You
on a
understand? I'm doing stereo drums.
Right.
Where do I put the bass? I had a both track. You ain't mixing that. You with me here?
Yeah.
You're not going to remix anything. So
Right.
that's why the bass. Anyway, he wouldn't play with the pick, and I couldn't get. And I said, if you don't play with the pick, I'm playing. Okay. Peter will tell you. Peter will tell you. Cetera's a great player, but he actually he taught himself how to. He was in a band. He was with Jimmy Ford and the Casuals.
Was he playing guitar?
He's playing bass, and Jimmy Vincent was a guitar player.
Great guitar player.
And Chicago, Bobby played pedals. I needed a bit, but I really needed the voice.
Yeah.
You know, because I didn't get into it. I just said, Walt, when I come back, I need this guy in the band. Well, we got pedals. Bobby plays pedals, you know.
Yeah.
I said, no. I need this. Because Bobby had a
Well, they were thinking saving some money on the road, you know, and
I know.
You know.
I don't know what they tell you. I'm just telling
That's
you.
what they
my
said,
way,
yeah.
I don't. And they were the biggest group on Rush Street. Not Chicago's at Barnaby's where they're throwing chicken wings, you know. And I had played all these clubs growing up, you know. I had played all down Rush Street. Last story. I'm 14 and I got a union card. Local 10. I had relatives in Italian. They got me a union card. But I had to leave the premises. We played from 9 to 5 at a breakfast show. These are outfit clubs, okay? 40 on, 20 off. I had to go sit in the cooler. I was only allowed on stage where there's liquor, but then I had to go sit in the cooler. So I went through a lot of music, and you know, that's how I started. I mean, there'd be a stripper, you know, I couldn't concentrate. You know? Anyway, that's what I did. I started on Rush Street and I played clubs and all that.
Did you start CMT television here, or what happened?
Yeah, I didn't take any credit for that. It was a big part of my life and others. Yeah, but we built it up from nothing. They invited me here. I ended up having to put money into it. I got it to 7 million homes or 17 million homes. And I got into it with Ted Turner.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, you can see me now or see me later. I've tied up all the birds for the next 5 years. You're going to go dark. And we sold it to Gaylord and Westinghouse.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to do it. But I had fun doing it. And I wouldn't have a ranch in Montana if I hadn't done it. But I liked the town, I liked the people. It's the most important thing that happened to country music, but it's not my ego. It's just, it's a good story because I had to go to Washington. And I hated MTV, and I went into C-SPAN, which was funded by the cable companies. And I said, when you talk about your target audience, I said, I've got all the women ironing during the day. I'd have no boots and whips, no violence to women. Help me out. And they gave me their backup transponder for $60,000 a month. Because this thing was history. It was all big dishes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to use aircraft. I flew to California and talked them into giving me a backup satellite. but at any moment it could have gone dark.
Because it turned.
And there was litigation from the shareholders, and it was a Meyer Blinder group, and I should have bankrupted the whole thing, but I left 7% in, and they litigated me forever. But I'm real proud of that, because how would you like to own a 24-hour country channel when your entire library is 32 videos?
Yeah.
Because the guys that owned it were set up in a strip center here, and they'd come in and give me 1,000 books, I'll put you on TV.
Yeah.
So they were going to shut it down. The record companies were on my side, and that's how Roseanne made a bunch of videos. I just started making little films. So that's, I mean.
It's a great story.
Yeah, but we never could get New York out of it. I never could clean it up 100%.
Okay.
But Viacom cleaned it up. So I'm real proud of doing that.
We just had their CMT Awards upstairs here last week.
They never call me.
Why not?
They never call.
Yeah. Speaking of that again, so have you sold the ranch now?
In Colorado, we kept part of it. We kept a little bit. The Walton family bought the original headquarters and open space and bowl. You can go enjoy the ranch. It's got trails and everything.
And so
when I sold CMT, I went to Montana.
So is it true that they hit oil on your property?
They hit a lot of natural gas, and now it's coming back.
Well, plus water.
I think
water was a big issue.
Yeah, I think there's oil there, but it's
Water.
But
water's
natural
the
gas
gold.
was there.
We had a lot of gas.
Yeah.
I still got.
But the water is the new gold.
So did you? Was that a good thing for you that the gas was there? Did you profit
A little
from that?
bit, a little bit. The environmentalists think I'm pro-energy. The energy guys think I'm a green maniac.
Yeah.
So I created a water management bill. So just the ranch is right on the state line of Wyoming, Montana. South of the state line are 40,000 wells. Okay. That was a big development, but there's very few wells north of there. Because I hired the PhD and I wrote the papers about the value. The water's worth more than the oil and the gas. So Montana has been a very expensive place to drill. I think eventually, I said, look, we live in a desert. You're going into these aquifers in order to retrieve the gas and the frack. You are going to turn us into a virtual desert. So unless we can beneficially utilize this resource, it's worth more than your damn oil. Okay? So that's been my life for the last 10, 20 years. So I got the University of Montana State University, and they made a presentation to Congress. In fact, this is an important issue for everybody here. The amount of water that is a byproduct of energy production, if it could be treated, which they say is uneconomical, we could save this planet. We could definitely save North America. When I supported these papers about, it's called produced water. Produced water is injected, disposed of, gone, or turned loose and pollutes the world. Anyway, these are kind of big issues I've enjoyed working on, and it's still a work in process. Now that natural gas is $5-6, they got the money to treat the water, and we got to feed the world. So anyway, those are the issues I got involved in a brittle environment, in a very harsh reality climate, and it's a very important issue, if you ask me. So there's been a lot of money and a blessing of being in the energy, but right now I'm considered an environmental radical.
Well, okay. Right now, I don't think it matters what side of the fence you're on anything.
Yeah.
If you're not on whoever's side, you're a radical, whatever.
Well, I just paid $5.99 for diesel. Yeah. And Northern California is going to pay $7-8, so anyway.
It's amazing from music to what Jim's done.
I know it, yeah.
It's a different song.
It is. Yeah. Well, hey, thank both of you so much for doing this for us.
Thank you, Joe.
And,
Thank you for
it's
the
been a real
opportunity.
Well, it's good to meet
Pleasure.
you because we got the same stories.
Some.
And we got the same experience.
Yeah, yeah,
It's the same system we were bucking.
yeah, yeah.
Didn't
No
it?
kidding.
The rules didn't change.
Yeah.
You know.
You were the first person I knew of that was a producer, and that was because I stared a hole through every Chicago record
Well, thanks.
growing up, and I feel like I somehow benefited and somehow subliminally learned from listening to what you did in the studio. And again, thanks so much for coming today, guys.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you,
See
Joe.
you next time on Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage.